We can eat it like yummy. You'll notice it's a little hairy. There's little deep teeth. There's like little raised teeth along here, so
Ridges.
there's nice little ridges on there. The Plantago major, which is one that grows more up north, it's actually a European one, has way broader leaves. It's broadleaf plantain. We use this for food. We use this to heal non-healing wounds or puncture wounds. It's antimicrobial. All parts of it can be used. I've literally packed wounds with this, like for real, in very scary ways that I had to send them to a wound clinic because I was like, I don't know that I want to do that. But it's definitely, oh, there's little threads. Very
And that's
mild.
just a weed?
It's a weed, yeah. And so this is the Florida version, and normally I would have passed this one by, but this morning I noticed the other ones over on the other path. So we have the native one and the Plantago major, and it used exactly the same. You can make tea out of it. You can make a poultice. We have what's called the spit poultice, where, and I didn't plant these. You can chew it up and like literally make it spit, or you just mash it up and do this and slap it on a bug bite, a wound. It can be used for cough, intestinal ulcerations. Yes.
It's so weird. You know, an Apple phone can now let you see it.
Oh, that's cool.
So what I just did is I took a picture of it, and all you do is go like this. It says look up plant, go like that, and
Fancy. I did the chat GPS or whatever the hell it
Take a
is,
picture
and
of it.
asked about some obscure
Just take a
herb. And I was
picture
like,
of
son of a
it,
gun, they're
erase it
right.
up, go to plant, and I'll tell you the result.
I didn't plant this.
a
This
regular Apple
grows
phone.
here.
Cheap, right?
One of its nicknames is White Man's Footprint because this will grow better in the path than it will in some carefully manicured plot somewhere. So I only find these in the paths. I never find them on the side. You can dig these up and plant them. Please don't. I already have some in the pots. 'Cause I always leave a few to teach with. So we have them dug up. And there's a very short, you'll get maybe 3 months of these. And then they're still there, but they're really hard to find. They die back. The more common Plantago major that we see over there, in some areas they're there year round. You just have to learn to recognize them. We're going to talk about them next. I'll meet you over there. I'm going to sneak through this way. Ha.
Oh, I couldn't find the Zoom app on your phone. I gave up after.
Oh, yeah. I think
Just
she's
recording.
recording it, so that worked. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that. So this baby here, let's see if I got it. It's a little early in the season for it. This is called Betony, Florida Betony Stachys floridata. We use it exactly the same as wood betony. Oh, there was a good one. Its common name is rattlesnake root. And it'll get, this is super tiny. These will get as big around as my finger and as long as my arm. It's firm like a radish, but sweet like a carrot. All parts of this plant can be used. So this is nourishing, good for the spine and actual physical nerves, and kind of looks like a nerve, which is that was a scary sound, which is a concept, doctrine of signatures, that if something looks like something, it might be good for it. Great example is, I'm beating up on walnuts today. Like people say, ooh, walnuts are good for the brain because it looks like a brain. And so about 20, 30 years ago, a couple of scientists got a $100,000 grant and found out that the essential fatty acids that are unique inside a walnut reduce the inflammation of the brain. You know, walnuts are good for the brain. So give me the 100 grand and just eat some walnuts. So this idea that it looks like a nerve means it's good for the physical nerves. The aerial parts are in the mint family, Laminaceae, and it has some of those key characteristics, the botany of it. It'll have a square stem. Let's make sure one of these is decent. The leaves are opposite. So here they're attaching to the stem opposite of each other, and then they alternate. They go in the opposite side. So opposite, alternating. They'll go like that all the way up. And if you look at the leaf edge, it's a true scallop on there. But there's one characteristic that it doesn't have, and that is it has no smell. Where most of our mints have volatile oils, just like regular mint does. Yeah. So one of the few mints that doesn't have that. So this is for stress. So Nervine helping with stress. The aerial parts I usually use for an infusion, a tea. And that idea of frazzled nerve, just kind of like, it's slightly cooling. And the aerial parts are dry. The roots are more moistening and grounding and better as an adaptogen, but also for the nerves. I have one of my, I guess she's an advanced, wow. One of my advanced students has a lot of things going on. Tourette's is one of them, ADHD and a couple of other things. And sometimes just being inside, the stupid lights and all that, interaction with too many people kind of wigs her out a little bit. And she's like, I gotta drive home, And when she learned this one, I would say to her, like, go outside, pick 3 roots, eat them, and see how you feel. And she would come back in and she'd be like, I'm good. And so, putting your hands physically in the dirt is just therapeutic in its own right. Eating a root that is planted in the ground, and it's for those frazzled, aggravated nerves, hits all of them. This is a Florida native.
What's it called again?
Florida betony, Stachys floridata, or rattlesnake root. And we've got a slide on this one too. This is what we'll talk about later. It likes full sun, moisture, but it has to be well drained. So I planted like one small pot of this 2 years ago, and we're digging it out of the pathway now. In my house, this was already growing there. I didn't plant it at my house. A huge plot.
It's not a wild weed.
It's a weed, yeah, and phenomenal medicine. And those roots, literally this long. Usually by July, they'll peak out on those. Huh?
Is that Scrophularia?
The root actually tastes better than the top.
Yeah, the root's really good. No, the Stachys, ST. Yeah, these are all Stachys.
She's eating. Right? Is that the same
Yeah, it's the
one?
same thing. He just has a bunch
Oh,
of
the
them.
roots, yeah.
Yeah, that's not as green.
What the hell? Let's talk about this guy. Yeah. Just because I can reach him.
Wow, that's papaya.
So, papaya is actually native here, as far as I know. When Columbus got lost and stumbled into San Salvador Island in the Bahamas, the native people took mercy on him and gave him papaya to eat because they were basically out of food. They were boiling up shoe leather and catching rats, and so that's not real kind to the belly. And this was one of when Columbus went back to Europe. This is one of the gifts that he brought back to Europe. Because he thought it was such an interesting medicinal as well as a yummy culinary herb. Pretty much all parts of this can be used. The fruit, I think, is super yummy, and none of these are quite ripe yet, unfortunately. So the seeds inside of here, even if you went to the Publix and just bought a papaya and you scraped out the little black seeds and threw them in the ground, they would grow. Amazing plant that from seed to harvest of the fruit is about 8 months. So that's a really fast grower. The flesh is anywhere from yellow to orange. There's a bunch of different species. All of them are super yummy, although some people hate them. The seeds are high in papain, which is a digestive enzyme that's specific for meats. And so if you dry out the seeds, they look like peppercorns, and you can put them in your grinder, like half papaya, half pepper. Grind those onto your meats, and it will start to break them down before you eat them, and it'll act as a meat tenderizer and digestive aid for it. They are spicy like pepper, and if we find one that's ripe, I'll bust them out. But like, it's peppery. Like you won't notice a huge difference. There's I would actually say a better note to it. It's almost horseradishy with a hint of sweet to it. Inside of here, if you score the fruit, there we go. It puts out a white latex that is digestive. And so you can put that onto a wart and it will dissolve the wart. It's the nature's compound W. Which also means that this could unpleasantly burn you.
Will it dissolve keratosis?
It might. You wouldn't be wrong to try.
Is it the
I've
same
tried
as,
compound W.
is it the same as Asclepius when you harvest Asclepius? Like butterfly
sorry.
weed, it has that milky.
It's a different substance. It's just like, I don't remember what's in it. So there's actually a lot of milky substances. Are deadly poison, but also can be corrosive. This one's milder than like the euphorbias will literally burn a hole in you. The pencil weed and things like that, or punch the bush. So this one's kind, but not. Also, this is used for beauty, that people will do a face mask with papaya. They'll either eat the flesh, but sometimes they'll use the skin. If you leave it on too long, it will dissolve the first few layers of your face. So it's like, yay, put it in your blender, make it, yeah, then wash that shit off. It will remove that top layer. And that's what a lot of like face masks, beauty things, they're skin peels, right? The leaves are used specifically for dengue fever, and maybe in Vietnam. You had papaya in Vietnam, right? Depending on where you are, dengue fever was an issue. And dengue fever, bad for many reasons, but one of the things it does is it destroys the platelets, and that's what usually kills people as the fever goes up, because it'll get like 105 fever. But it destroys the platelets, and they die from that, on the destruction of the platelets going so low. This helps to preserve the platelets with dengue fever. And
Mostly in north and central.
is that where they had it? Yeah. And like I see this sold as like blood purifier, and there's all these things, and it's like, it's the only thing that I know of it being used for the leaves is specifically in conjunction with dengue. There's nothing wrong with doing them the rest of the time. But I'd rather eat the fruit and save this for dengue. And if you're like, yeah, well, I live in the United States, we're not going to get dengue fever. I hate to say it, global warming is bringing your tropical diseases. They're now the first cases of malaria have shown up in the Keys as well as in southern Mexico. So chikungunya, dengue, probably yellow fever at some point, those and malaria will all be something that we'll be experiencing in our lifetime, especially here in Florida. Those were diseases that were common here, yellow fever in particular. That's why they did a lot of the canals here in Florida, was to bring salt water in to kill the yellow fever mosquitoes into the stagnant water. This is super easy. You can grow it in a pot to start, but it doesn't do well long term in a pot. So once you get a sprout, put it in the ground. And when it gets about head height, dig that sucker up, get your post hole diggers, whatever, dig it down to the top branches, or to the bottom branches, and two things will happen. A, when the fruit's ready, you can just reach out and pick it. You don't have to get a step ladder. It's like, that one over there, I need a ladder to get to, and I don't have a ladder that tall. So it will, easier to harvest the fruit. It will do better. What oftentimes happens, if any of you have like failed with this, just as they're starting to get ripe, you'll get trunk rot, and it'll fall over with a bunch of green papayas. And yes, you can do green papaya salad and all that. I like mine yellow. So if you do that, you will not get trunk rot. You will get multiple years of harvesting. That one's now 3 years old. Because I used that trick. I learned it from a guy from Suriname. That he was like, nope, we always get, we never lose our trees as long as you dig them into the ground. It will look like hell when you pull it out of the ground, you dig it down, it'll drop its leaves, it'll be fine. Just water it in for a couple of days, and you'll have these guys forever.
Does it matter when you plant
I've actually never even paid attention. I just throw it in the ground whenever I feel like it. Like as some of these will fall, the rats and the squirrels will get to it, and so I'll just throw it in the ground and I'll find little patches of papaya growing all over, and I'll pull a few out and do it. Odd thing about papayas, there's I don't see any flowers on this one. There's males and females. So in case you didn't know it, this one is a boy tree. It has an outie. So the flowers are at the end of that little stalk. And girl trees have an innie where the flower will be, see, there's one in here. Oh yeah, so here's a little flower that's up against the stalk. There are bisexual trees that have both boy and girl parts. I guess that makes it a hermaphrodite. You can also change the sex of a tree by stressing it. So that one's work. So in Central America, they'll actually, because you end up with more boys than girls, and the girl wants to produce the fruit, right? The offspring, the same as in humans. So if you take a spike and drive it through the center of the tree, it will stress it out and change its gender. So your male trees will produce fruit.
So this one, for example, is not going to produce fruit.
You won't get any fruit from it, or you'll get like weird fruit that aren't really yummy. So, and you can grow a variety of different species here. This is a tough tree. Like this one fell over back in the spring with a hurricane. You could cut it off and it would put up new spikes and things like that. Yeah.
May I add a comment?
Yeah, please.
So for mother that just give birth to a baby and they want nurse and cannot produce milk
Yeah.
enough, you cook the green papaya.
The green ones. Oh.
Cook like with chicken stock, whatever stock, and eat the papaya and drink the broth. It will produce enough milk.
Nice. Yeah. It's very nutritious. Yeah.
Now cook the green one now, not the yellow one.
Yeah. Just turn it to mush.
Thank you.
Let's see who else we got here. Oh, Lisa's gonna have to do the one about. Well, maybe I'll go fast on these. So this is the season for this. This is Lepidium virginicus. It's a Chinese herb, Ting Li Zi. I don't know Vietnamese, sorry. And it is poor man's pepper or pepper grass, and it is a type of wild mustard. So, yes, it's spicy. And if you're like, I can't do any spice, don't eat this. If you're like, as long as it's not too hot, you'll be fine. And it's really interesting. It's easy to identify with the flower stalks here. These are little paddle-shaped seeds on here. You can kind of see there's like a white flower there. These are around most of the year, and they have this nice taproot on here that's super yummy. All parts of this plant are edible. I love the seeds too. You can like strip these off and like throw them into like a pumpkin soup or something, like so good. But what you'll find, the seeds are the best, but the leaves are a little spicier. I've heard it compared to wasabi. What I'll say is the first, and this is kind of like teaching your palate, the first bite is sweet for like a millisecond there. You're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, and it's going to be like, it's going to start to ramp up, and then it's just, boom, it'll stop. And if you're like, oh, hell no, just spit it out.
Oh, I enjoy it.
Yeah, I know, this one's super yummy. So, this can be used for a dry cough. Oh, sorry, plant. A dry cough, especially with constipation. If any of y'all had, old world grandmama or something, and your grandmama did mustard plasters on your chest, this is a wild mustard, and we don't have to limit it to the chest because that hurts sometimes. But what that mustard plaster would do is would cause secretions on your lungs, your mucous membranes, in order to break up a sticky, dry cough. It does the same thing to your poop. Don't worry, nobody's going to be running from the toilet in this little bit. But it is super yummy. This is food, medicine. You can make mustard. You can make some stone ground mustard. You can.
It just tastes like radish.
Yeah, it's got a little radishiness to it. Yeah.
I can see it again. Like sweet.
It's fun.
And yeah,
I like that a lot.
yeah, no. Most
Oh my
people
God.
like it. If you like hate spicy, then
Like a green pea soup or something.
oh yeah, any kind of thick, rich soup like that. All right, I'm sorry, I'm going to run over because I want to talk about this one because I have better stories. I'm obviously long-winded today. All of you have this weed in your yard, I promise.
A lot of it.
Yes. So this is Biden's Alba, Beggar's Tick, Spanish Needle, thank you, jeez. Although this has a square stem, this is not in the Laminaceae, this is in the Aster family, Asteraceae. This is the #1 bee food in Florida, and not limited to bees, but other pollinators as well. This is can be used just like plantain, that we can do a spit poultice, mash it up and put it on a bug bite or an abrasion. That's how I first learned it. This can be cooked up like spinach as a cooked green. You can throw it into a salad, it's fine. All parts of the plant are used. It's used for urinary tract infections, which kind of like, I've never had a UTI, but I understand they're hot and burny. And so that tells us a little bit about this. This is cooling. It will literally take a bug bite away. So a red bug bite will turn normal scallard afterwards if you push this on there. I learned this though, I always talk about it as food and like bug bitey stuff. And I was doing a teach-in where you go into elementary schools and tell kids how cool your job is. And somebody said, I'm going to ask an herbalist to come do that to a bunch of third graders. I was like, that was dumb. So I went in and I pulled a bunch of weeds from the schoolyard, and I went in and it's like, here, I brought lunch. They were not amused. And this was pre-COVID, so there's one little kid sitting in the front, like, the whole time. And they're like, don't worry, he's not contagious. You know, he's been doing that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And he's already on antibiotics, he's got an inhaler. And he was the only kid who ate any of the weird shit that I passed around. And so, yay, he ate this, and my 10 minutes of fame were up. And so I'm walking down the hall to the next class, and the teacher comes down the hall saying, Bob, what'd you give a little Johnny? And I was like, oh, crap. Anybody can have, an allergy to anything. Poor kid's an anaphylactic shock, I was like, why? And I was like, he stopped coughing. I was like, oh, I'm sure his meds just kicked in, right? And so what happened was 2 weeks, and I'm sorry, I'm looking for a different version of this. I don't see it. Oh, well. 2 weeks later, I get a letter written in third grader saying, thank you so much for curing me of my cough. And somewhere I still have it. If I ever clean my house, I'll find it. And so it was super sweet, but then it was like, don't be friends with an herbalist, because now we're going to torture everyone to to better understand this plant. So everybody I knew who had any kind of cough, it's like, here, eat this. Tell me what happens. And what I figured out was it is specific for a lingering cough after a cold and flu with clear or white phlegm. Teaspoon to a tablespoon of it eaten up fresh, it will resolve the cough, single dose. Does not come back. Yeah, right. 80% success
For
rate.
chronic cough.
Yes. Well, after a cold and flu, like, oh, I got COVID, and then 4 weeks later, you're still like,
Not a smoker or something.
yeah. And so it'll help the smoker's cough and other coughs. It guides to the lung, but it won't be magical. For that, I had the flu a month ago and I just can't stop. Don't worry, I'm not testing positive for anything to any weird diseases. The best ones to use are in flower. If you're, hopefully all of you have grown lettuce at some point, and you got all this yummy lettuce and you're clipping those, and at some point the summer comes and what happens? It bolts, right? And now we go, oh, it's nasty, and we throw it in the compost pile. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that lettuce, by the way. It just doesn't taste as sweet and yummy as the regular lettuce does. The same is true of this. If you can start to recognize it before it goes into flower, then it's better food. It's not as bitter, it's mildly bitter. And here, I'm sitting here hogging it. Here, have some. Yeah. And so you can eat it still in this form, but this makes better medicine. Bitter is always better medicine. This is also a Chinese herb, Shen Feng Sao, doesn't matter. But if you look at the research, there's a lot of research out of, oh my God, University of Mississippi, I think, does a lot of herbal research for some reason. I don't know why. They're researching this for leukemia, chronic malaria, and a number of other diseases. So you're not limited to bug bites, UTIs, and cough, but those are the things I use it most commonly for. I don't like this. I don't think this is strong enough for a, oh my God, I got an acute UTI. But there's some folks, especially as folks age, where they're getting another UTI every couple of weeks. You can't do that many antibiotics. It just stops having good benefit. Some of the stronger herbs are a little too strong. This one is wonderful to give people with that.
How do you take it?
You make tea.
Saute it.
Yeah, you totally make tea. You can make a tincture of it. I prefer it fresh.
Yeah.
So a fresh tea. You can do tinctures, but I'm like, why? We got acres of this stuff around. And ultimately, I usually prefer to have people just eat it fresh like this. For the youngest kid I've ever given this to is 2 years old, and I did make an infusion with that, and worked like a champ. And they drank it even without honey or anything.
So how do the aerial parts compare in medicinal? Like which one?
So I
is
prefer
more
the
specific to
leaves.
cough, which one's
I find the I find the leaves are better than the flowers, but the flowers taste better. So I want it to taste like shit. So I actually, if I'm like, crap, I can't find any, and I want to add it to food, I actually think we should decorate our food with flowers all the time. So picking these flowers and dropping them on in your salad, on your mashed potatoes, it doesn't matter. I think adds nutrients and color, but for the cough, I really like the leaves. All of it can be used.
It's also the best way to teach kids about plants is with the flowers.
Yeah.
The kids will always pick you flowers.
Totally.
And every kid that my kids play with, my kids always tell them, Mommy, you're all about plants. Tell them about plants. So they bring me all the flowers. And every
Oh my
time they
God.
bring me a flower, they're like, can you eat that? And I'm like, well, yeah.
Most of them you can.
Yeah. So we go through, and that's how we pretty much teach them all about the plants.
So I bet you Ruthie does another plant walk either tomorrow or today. I do want to. All right, I'm going to yap, and then I think it's on that. Yeah, that path's got the other plantain on it, just so you can shop and compare. It's the only one. I think all the other ones got dug up, so that's the last one in the yard. And I'll just give my spiel now. Please, there's a fridge, microwave. You can borrow one of the burners if you need to cook anything. There's a health food store down about 3 blocks. Earth Origins and Craft Cafe is down there. There's crappy food up on 34th Street, and there's a grocery store down on 66th. Or just snack on the goodies here. It's
109.
so let's say 220. Yeah, that we'll meet back here, and I will vanish. Although I'm sure I'll stick my head in.
Do we need to drive or? Oh, we need to drive. Okay.
So this is the Plantago major. This is the one you find up north all the time. That's everywhere. And as a kid, I'm sorry, little boys are destructive, and so it's really fun to like just pull them.
This is the more common plantain.
Yeah, this one, although it's very rare to find it here.
Yeah.
Inhaled leaf. Oh my God.
It would be good with these two guys. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Yeah.
You know what I've been getting is plantain croutons. It's so good.
Oh, I lost my drink.
Oh my God.
It's here.
I'm shocked.
In salad or in soup. He's coughing. I'm so happy.
Biden's will not fix this.
You only have to see.
That's what I tell my husband all the time. I'm just going to take all the seeds and just everywhere.